And net gallery and speaker, some reason. Okay, Vanchakalpatarubhascha kripasindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Tamal Krishna Goswami Namane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshtarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktabinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome everybody to today's recordings. Today we'll have two wonderful devotees who will be speaking. We'll start with His Grace Radhanath Prabhu, and then we'll have His Grace Yudhishthira Prabhu speaking. And then after that, we'll open up the session so anybody who'd like to ask any questions can do that. So before we start, I will introduce the speaker, the first speaker, and then introduce Yudhishthira Prabhu when he speaks. So His Grace Radhanath Prabhu was introduced to Krishna consciousness in 1976 by his future godbrother, His Grace Mathuranath Prabhu. They were close friends and next-door neighbors in Nashville, Tennessee. They regularly visited Murari Sevaka and thus began their spiritual life. On their 1978 visit through Tennessee, they were introduced to our future spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. He told us of his plan to start a householder community in Dallas and asked them to visit. In true Gurudeva fashion, the visit became an order, and 4 families from across the state of Tennessee made the move to Dallas in 1979. He is currently serving the cows who offer their milk to their lordships, Sri Radha Kalachandji, and a small amount of landscaping services for the restaurant and the temple. Welcome, Radhanath Prabhu. Please enlighten us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Vanchakalpatarubhascha kripasindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhutale Shrimate Tamal Krishna Goswami Namane. I'll start at the very beginning of my association with Gurudev in terms of management. When I first joined in 1979, Jasadena Maharaj immediately put me into a position of temple management and treasury, what have you. So my initial association with Gurudev in terms of management was I got to see him operate as he dealt with his god brothers, and he was exactly like you would expect a CEO of a company to be. He did not micromanage. He had everybody give him different reports, and he would take the summation of these reports, and then he would make recommendations on what should be done in different areas. So in 1980, as many people know, the Guru Reform movement began. That was essentially Srila Prabhupada's disciples were somewhat unhappy with the way that the 11 gurus were, the 11 initiating gurus were conducting themselves, and they felt that there should be some change, and so the GBC felt the need, and they did intercede. In doing that, Srila Gurudev was asked to go to India and then to begin to fulfill the mission that Srila Prabhupada had given him to open up China. And in the meantime, he was taken out of Dallas, and we were bereft of his association and his management. 1981, whatever the circumstances, those things happened far above my pay grade. But Srila Gurudev was given his zone back. Initially, we were Chicago, St. Louis, Dallas, and then we had our farm in Oklahoma, and then and Houston, excuse me. So when Gurudev came back, he came back with only the Oklahoma farm, Dallas, and Houston temples. For whatever reason, many of his god brothers left our zone. So we had a few, Chaitanya Chandra Prabhu most notably, stayed and helped us younger devotees out. Remember, most of us at the very earliest had been initiated in 78, myself and several others only in 79, and then some even in 80. So we were very young devotees. And when Gurudev came back, we were what he was left with. What did we know of management in terms of Krishna consciousness? Many of us had been managers. I had myself been a manager for a railroad, and but I had one very distinct advantage there, was I control people's paychecks, so they're very motivated. So we had to learn from his divine grace how to manage someone who is donating and giving their entire life to a cause. So Gurdev's management style was, as I mentioned earlier, he treated us the same way. The minutia of day-to-day affairs, he didn't involve himself with so much, but he did take reports and he gave his recommendations, and of course his recommendations became instructions. But before his departure, we had just started the Dallas Temple in terms of building the new altar and finishing the temple room. So when he came back, we were pretty bereft of funds. We were bereft of manpower. And so many of us, including myself, felt like that when Gurudev came back, we would just maintain and just try to keep everything afloat, if you will. Well, anybody that knows Srila Gurudev knows that is certainly not his style. And he came back and he went full ahead. He was fully involved at that point in starting his China mission. And for us, he was fully involved in finishing up the temple, first the altar, then the temple room, then the restaurant, and then the Oklahoma farm. So his management style for me was he was encouraging. He would guide you and send you in a way, but the most important thing he did, and this was just his entire Krishna consciousness career, was he constantly encouraged you to be Krishna conscious and to serve the higher cause. And because he did that, things were able to go on nicely. So during that trying time, we were able to not only finish the temple room in Dallas, which many of you know about and know it's probably one of the nicest in our movement, Kalachandji's restaurant, and then we had Harmony Farms, which also called New Kurukshetra, which at one point we could no longer afford based on the size of our zone. But it was remarkable what he did in that he took a young devotee like myself. He had Pandava Vijay Prabhu, who was managing in Houston, and he had Balaram Prabhu, who was managing at the farm. And none of these things kind of missed a lick, if you will. They just continued going on simply by his mercy. The thing that impressed me and always stays with me was that even though he was expert at managing seemingly material things, for instance, he was, we were first building the restaurant, he came on a daily basis and saw things. And even though there were construction managers there, in terms of Pashupati Prabhu and Jagopal Prabhu, Srila Gurudev was able to make recommendations on things that would work better, more efficiently. And then when we did open the restaurant, many nights, I'm not going to say every night because I don't recall actually, but Srila Gurudev was down in the restaurant making sure that everything went smoothly. And I remember one thing he told me, which he was very proud of. There used to be a window between the kitchen and the hallway, and this gentleman was walking down the hall, and he himself was a restaurateur, and he asked, as he was coming, he was looking in the mirror, and Srila Gurudev went over and started visiting with him, and the gentleman said, I just have one important question to ask you that I can't figure out how y'all do this. So Srila Gurudev he said he had no idea where this man was going to go. And Srila Gurudev says, yeah, he'll be happy to answer any question for you. And he said, I'd like to know how you get this many people in this small a space and you all get along. And of course, Gurudev found that extremely comical, because he knew that only by serving Krishna could you put that many people together and have the harmony that went along with it. The thing that impressed me the most about Srila Gurudev was, during that time, even though we had so many different projects going on, he was extremely involved in each person's life. We weren't just someone there to perform a service to get a job. He was very involved in our daily spiritual activities. Even though we were pushing, he still made sure that we took the time to chant our rounds. And even when we got behind on our rounds, which we all did, he had a meeting with us, and he addressed that and helped us to understand how sometimes you have to do the needful. But during the entire time that I was managing in Dallas, and I had to manage a couple of times, and understanding that my management was only a stopgap management. Certainly wasn't qualified then, now, or ever. But because we had no senior managers left, Srila Gurudev had to take the, I won't say the best, in Pandava Vijay and Balaram's case for certain. But he had to take from whatever pool he had to keep things going. But to finish that thought, the thing that just totally impressed me was how much Srila Gurudev knew about each devotee that was in our zone under his care. And so many times he would bring up a devotee and have us go and have this devotee come and talk with him. And sure enough, there was something going on with this devotee that none of us saw, and actually they were holding in themselves. But he was very much attuned to the whole spiritual atmosphere of Dallas, Houston, and Oklahoma. It's a very difficult time that we had to go through, and I don't think that he was ever given enough credit for what he was able to pull off, and keeping everything together and having our movement grow. And the big thing is, even though we're talking about the Dallas Temple, is we have to remind ourselves and understand that he had also started the Hong Kong, the Chinese Yatra, and he was completely involved in that. So it wasn't that he was just one little thing. He was actually international. And I recall so many conversations, him having us get his god brothers or god sisters or someone on the phone. And he was also involved very heavily in still in the international movement. So I can't possibly say enough about anyone. I was fortunate enough to be able to manage with some of his god brothers, and a lot of my god brothers, and I can say without any hesitation, no one ever managed like Srila Gurudev did. And if you listen to the memories, the Prabhupada memories, you see that he came to Krishna consciousness with a lot of managerial skills, but he was completely trained up by Srila Prabhupada in every aspect. And not only did he take that training, but he perfected that training. Pretty much everyone has listened to the memories tapes, and I would recommend that you listen to them all again, because these older disciples of Srila Prabhupada had so much association, they had so much to offer. And the memories are actually great instructions as to how we should conduct our Krishna consciousness career. I'm looking forward to hearing what Yudhisthira Prabhu has to say, because he was the temple president in Dallas for so many years. Anyhow, Yudhisthira Prabhu, I now turn it over to you, and thank everyone for your time. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so very much, Radhanath Prabhu. That's really nice. So please stay in, and after Yudhishthira Prabhu speaks, then people may have questions of you, and so they can ask you those questions at that time. So let me now introduce Yudhishthira Prabhu. His Grace Yudhishthira Prabhu joined the ISKCON family in 1975, when brought to see Srila Prabhupada in the mid-1975 by tennis star Peter Burwash. In 1983, he was initiated by His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami and became the Dallas Temple Vice President in late 1984 until 1990, when he was appointed Temple President. From 1990, for 10 years until 2000. His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami called Yudhishthira Prabhu his, quotes, permanent secretary from 1984 to 2002. He is the author of 9 books and founded a prominent sporting goods company in 1994, which has supported many Dallas Temple community members for more than 30 years. He also recently served on a GBC ad hoc committee and writes a monthly column for www.iskonnews.org entitled, quotes, Coming of Age, which addresses topics about integrating our individual humanity into ISKCON's broad international institutional presence. Thank you so very much, Yudhishthira Prabhu. Please enlighten us. Thank you so very much. Hare Krishna.
Shriranam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. They say that youth, I'm not sure what the expression is, but something like, good health and energy is wasted on youth.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we get older, there are lessons that continue to avail themselves to us. For example, I'm only laughing because the most important things are often just in front of our eyes. For example, the Shikshastakam, which Lord Chaitanya left us, arguably the most important verse includes developing three qualities, and those are tolerance and humility, right? And then respect, which is essentially moving towards non-judgment of other souls and also accepting them where they're at. So this idea of being more tolerant than a tree, more humble than a blade of grass, and also showing all respect to others. And in that state of mind, then one can perform yoga, bhakti yoga. So I'd like to start by apologizing for the many offenses that I'm sure I unknowingly committed to many of you, if not all of you, and also to, some things, sometimes we recognize offenses committed, but it's afterwards. It's after we say something and then we sense somebody's reaction or whatever. So there's so many things. And recently was able to spend a fair amount of time with Dhanadhar Swami at Govardhan, and he was reading from a play that was written by, I believe, Vinod Baba, who lives near Radhakund. And it was all about Sadhu Vaishnav Ninda. It was all about offenses. And while we hear that, whatever service that we do is eternally in our spiritual savings account, there's also the risk of falling short as far as tolerance, as far as humility, and as far as respecting others. So it's very risky business to be put in a leadership position. I think Radhanath Prabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, Sringarupa, it's risky business. And I also want to apologize for accepting too much praise, because it's one thing to be, get some recognition, but it's another thing to accept it on our own behalf, as opposed to considering ourselves just an instrument being used. Prabhupada, I'm reading in Shrutakirti Prabhu's book, What's the Difficulty? And, he just said whatever was given to Prabhupada, he accepted, whether it was a construction site that wasn't quite his room or whatever. So when I first experienced ISKCON in the mid-70s, it was in Hawaii mostly. And the temple presidents there they were treated, they were worshipped. I don't know what else to say. I didn't get that. Radhanath Prabhu, I doubt you got that.
No.
During that time. Nityananda Prabhu, I don't think you got all the Maha served before you. So those days were very extreme. And I can share, a little story. Mukunda Datta Prabhu was present, and most of you, if not all of you, I think know who he is. And he was present at one of Srila Gurudev's Vyasa Puja celebrations up in the darshan room, and we each gave gifts, right? So in those days, this was, I don't know, probably 90s, I'm thinking maybe, whenever Blackberries came out. So I didn't have much money, and it was like promises of everything will be fine. Just Radhanath Prabhu, you remember packing up your vehicle and your U-Haul or whatever you drove, right, when you came south or southwest towards Dallas. And it was the same with us during those days. We were told, yes, we'll cover the apartment for a few months or for a year or 2 years or whatever. And after a few months, all the money ran out, and there was no support. We had to use up whatever was left, which was very little by that time, of savings, and then ultimately start working or figuring out how to, survive, right? Those of us with families. But it was, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Within a week of being at the Dallas Temple, Bhakti Rupa Prabhu was an accountant type. And for those of you that know him, he was quite serious. He wasn't like a jovial, optimistic. I'm thinking of Dinabandhu Prabhu in Vrindavan, someone who's more happy-go-lucky and conveys all this joy daily. He was very serious. And I remember like he came up after Mangalarti and spoke. This is probably within a week or 2 weeks of us moving to Dallas. And he said, I'm sorry, there's no money, and breakfast will just have to be, what is it called when it's oat water? Is that the
Grits.
huh?
They call it grits.
No, it's not that opulent.
No.
It's oat water.
Yeah, it's water and I guess oats, but not enough to make overnight oats by any means. So, it's just basically a soupy thing with a few oats sprinkled in. So it was challenging. I remember once being called up to Srila Gurudev's room, and Maturnath and Radhanath Prabhus were there. Radhanath, I think you told me this, so you probably remember. And I came in and I was like, rah rah, and just smiling ear to ear, and blissed out and all this stuff. And I came in and offered obeisances. Gurudev gave me something to do, told me go do this. And then I left, and then he told you and Maturnath, Yudhisthira still thinks this is fun.
Yes, I remember that.
So, I do have a slightly different take on volunteerism because, the transactional part of our lives is it's so embedded in the material world that things are transactional. I do this, I get this, I treat you nice, you're going to treat me nice. It's just transactional. So while people are by and large volunteering their time, I never personally, I try to emphasize commitment over compensation and the importance of committing to being responsible as what was important rather than, oh, I'm volunteering, this doesn't matter, because the Lakshmi aspect is totally, totally temporary. And back to Mukunda Datta, so, I'd like to speak a little bit about samskaras. And some people joke and they say, so-and-so has some scars because the English word scars, right, mixes in. So it's a bit of a play on words. I always say, yeah, some people have some scars. I have many scars. So, we have that going. And Mukunda Datta Prabhu, back to that Vyasa Puja. So I gave a blackberry, and Gurudev kind of, received it, right, and nodded his head and put it to the side. And then Mukunda Datta Prabhu, no, he gave the clothing, a set of outfits for Radha Damodar, and he was the pujari then. This is I don't know when, early 90s maybe, or whenever blackberries came out. And he gave him the deities the outfit, and then I gave the blackberry, and Gurudev's 2 words where that figures, because Mukunda Datta was so devotional, and I was, definitely on the practical spectrum, with 10 years of managing with Peter Burwash already on my resume, so to speak. So I just think, temple presidents, I mean, it's important to recognize service, but we shouldn't think it's any different than any other service. And it is that pitfall that I, you know, acknowledged of accepting recognition is a real stumbling block um, to not only, I mean, you know, we can think at the beginning to get out of this material world, but ultimately what we come to realize we just want to be with Guru and Krishna serving. And that's our desire. It's not like we're dreaming, I want to have that mango that doesn't have any skin or any pits, you know? At least I don't think like that. Um, so yeah, during that time, specifically, Radhanath Prabhu, you had a different experience during those years, you know, because I was not in Dallas per se. I mean, first time I got to Dallas to visit was late 82. The restaurant had just opened, I think, you know, weeks before. The temple room was just completed. Chaitanya Chandrapur was the first person to give a temple tour to me. It was just wonderful. I was a life member. I stayed up in the guest room. I had this nice Pentax camera. And of course, being trusting and naive, I left it up there and it lasted a few hours before someone grabbed it. I hope they got a lot of use out of it. I didn't take it real seriously. Um, yeah, but those times, you know, right after the zonal breakup kind of thing, the zonal Acharya transitions were going on, the Ritvic thing was going on, the poison theory stuff was going on. Gurudev was GBC chairman for two to three different times during those years. I'm not sure. And it was, let's just say it wasn't boring. It, it definitely could have been a TV series during that time, maybe a bit of an expose and also inspirational at the same time. So let's see if I have a few more notes to share, and then we can open it up, you know.
If I may say, if I may say one thing on that, I offered my obeisances to Prahladananda Maharaj many years after, because he was the temple president during Gurudev's absence. And I said, Maharaj, I know I committed so many offenses, you know, knowing and unknowing. And he said, and I can't remember if it was Chandaka Pandit or who, but Prahladananda Maharaj says, well, you'll have to remind me what they were. He says, because I really don't remember everything that went on during that time myself. He said, but let's just call those interesting times.
And you know, Radhanath Prabhu, when I moved to Dallas, I remember asking Maturna, what about dental care? Right? Because where I was coming from was 10 years in a management situation. I was already 30. Yeah, I was already 30 years old. You know, when Peter Burwash brought me to the airport to see Prabhupada out that first time, I was 21, 20 or 21. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, Gurudev was quite, in 1990, he invited all of us to lunch, and I knew he was going to ask me, not ask me, sorry. He was going to assign me to be temple president. So I raised my hand, and there was, you know, there were like 8 or 10 people there, right? Including, I believe, Giridhar Swami and other seniors. And I raised my hand and I said, Srila Gurudev Bhakti True Maharaj told me that Prabhupada said that temple presidents could do 2-year shifts on a rotating basis. And he said, he looked at me and said, that's nonsense. And then just kept going, and that was it. So it was more or less January 1st, 1990. And by 1998, I had, I guess, 15 years of, yeah, I'll say being so fortunate, you know, to be close to him. But for my spiritual capacity, my sponge had already filled up. And I started asking him to have me replaced. And he had me stay on for another almost 2 years until January 1st, 2000, as Nityananda Prabhu will remember, on that day, because that was Gurudev, you know. He was the one who called me from England one day, and Madan Mohan Prabhu had shipped his weightlifting, his little gym from Mexico. And Gurudev called me and said, well, Yudhisthira, I just lifted 30,000 pounds. And I was like, excuse me? You know, what, like, what does that mean? You know, I lifted 30,000 pounds. And then after a few exchanges and him laughing, he said, yeah, you know, I did 40 pounds of reps, you know, 20 times 3. So that's 60 times 40. That's 2,400 on this machine. And then he added all the weights up. Right. So that was Gurudev. So he wanted to, you know, January 1st, 1990 to also January 1st, 2000. He liked things to be clean and tidy, you know. He was also very cognizant of people's spiritual needs, strengths, and weaknesses, and also their personal samskaras, how to use people in Krishna's service, just like the flute is used by Krishna to call all the souls back to him. So Gurudev assigned, he asked Drista Prabhu, most of you will remember him, Prabhupada disciple who's now in North Carolina, to be the vice president because he would be able to absorb some of the more emotional and spiritual issues, which I was not mature enough at different times in different circumstances to deal with. And then he was replaced when he moved to North Carolina by Radha Vinod Prabhu and Maturnath Prabhu. And there may have been some overlap too, especially with Maturnath Prabhu. And yeah, just such fond memories, but also so uniquely intense. I guess that's a good way to say it. So I'll stop here. I mean, Radhanath Prabhu, you spoke for about 15, 20 minutes. So this is about 20, and see if there are any questions about, yeah, so much to share. I'll be quiet now. Questions?
Thank you so very much, Yudhishthira Prabhu. That was really great. Do you remember if Gopal Acharya Prabhu was the temple president?
Of course. Yeah, for a short time. Mahabodhi was when I first came. He left. I think Gopal was for a short time. I remember when I first arrived. I believe Radhanath Prabhu, when I was visiting, trying to look for a place to live. I think you were TP still. I don't know. Yeah, but Gopal Acharya was, you know, very soft, wonderful devotee, and I'm not sure where he's living now. But so many different highlights, you know. Yeah, so many different highlights. And it's so rewarding to see now, like Govardhan Puja, we had a group that took prasadam in the restaurant, but we saw the, you know, the crowds out in the park honoring prasadam, the temple room. So yeah, I just want to thank all of you, not just the temple presidents and vice presidents, but everyone, because it's a group effort. And it's a family effort, you know, there's no question. So we're all standing. Hopefully there won't be just one last man standing, but there'll be many of us standing at the end.
Yeah, but we all thank you all so very much because you really did a lot of heavy lifting. I remember that before you, the average stint was 18 months for a temple president. They didn't last more than 18 months. It was so heavy. I mean, just so difficult. The task was just excruciatingly difficult. I mean, you know, so you all made it easier for the rest of us to actually, you know, come in and
yeah, and also I think, you know, there's with our GBC and for most of us at that time, our spiritual master, His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami, he was like, I felt like he was right behind me holding a big,
Stick.
I'm going to say stick. Yeah. I was thinking a big dunda, or a big club. But yeah, so he was there in case there was really a problem. People knew
Right,
that, the powerhouse was right behind,
right.
I think
and
one of the things that was really different, pardon me for interrupting, but one of the things that was really different back then was because the community wasn't as large. As temple presidents, we were much more intimately involved in devotees' lives.
Mm,
Their problems became our problems.
mm,
And they didn't have so many people to go and talk to.
right.
So that made it quite intense. I remember being severely chastised one time because of counseling I had given a particular devotee. And Gurudev admonished me and reminded me that I was not him, that he could say certain things and we couldn't.
Mm,
So, as Yudhisthira alluded to earlier, uh, yeah, Gopalacharya Prabhu was one of the people who he actually in between two of my stints as temple president, Gopalacharya served as temple president.
mm,
Uh, and while they had the spiritual knowledge and the spiritual back, there was also a certain maturity that came with having to deal with people's lives. And I think probably, and maybe Yudhisthira Prabhu, because we had managed outside of ISKCON, it may have helped us to be a little bit more prepared for that and not to carry that burden on. One thing I always remember very distinctly about Gopalacharya Prabhu was how sick he became. And
mm.
and I asked Srila Gurudev about it. And he said, well, he wanted to do this and he didn't realize how much karma you have to take on by accepting this position. He said, so his sickness is he's not able to let it flow through him. All these things are hitting him and they're sticking with him.
Well, I can say that on that, if we're sitting here 10 years from now and we do a similar Zoom, Krishna willing, you were temple president a shorter period of time than Nityananda Prabhu and I. And if Nrsimha Rupa Prabhu has no hair, then we'll know what you just said is true. Because mine fell out, mine started falling out after I was TP. And I got asthma and one other thing I won't mention, but yeah, the physical manifestations of stress are undoubtedly part of the package, no matter what you're doing. But specifically, we understand that ultimately what we're doing is all spiritually connected, whether we know it or not.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji. Devotees, please, if any of you would like to ask any questions, please chime in. Nrsimha Rupa, anybody, please do chime in. Thank you very much.
So I'll just poke in and fill some gaps with some things. So when I asked Maturnath about dental stuff, he just kind of laughed, He didn't know what to say because he was like, what? Like, you're concerned about that? Krishna takes care of our teeth. It's okay. He didn't say that, but it looks like Rati Manjari Prabhu has her hand up.
Yes, please, Rati Manjari Prabhu, go ahead.
Yes, Hare Krishna. So wonderful to see all of you. I don't think I can turn on my camera, but that's okay.
Oh, you
Um,
can. The host can turn it on. So please, Dale Govinda Prabhu, can you turn the camera on for Rati Manjari Prabhu?
Sure, Prabhuji.
Go ahead. Thank you.
I might just add, why not let everyone put theirs on if they
The
want?
reason was the last time what happened was
We had a glitch.
yes. So this time we thought we'd just bring a little extra security. That was all.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
Shivi Prabhu's idea, but she's going to come on. I think the video will show very soon.
I don't think I can do it myself. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai. Hare both. So wonderful to be with you all. Thank you so much for taking the care to preserve all these amazing memories. I had a question to Yudhisthira Prabhu. As we know, Srila Gurudev, he always worked from a vision. He did everything with a vision, which of course Srila Prabhupada has instilled in him, but also his own talent, skills, desires, everything he worked towards visions. And I know a little bit from the talks I had over the years with Yudhisthira Prabhu that sometimes it was pretty hard, just like you just mentioned, you actually wanted to change service, but then it took another 2 years before that actually happened. So yeah, it must not have been easy. So I was wondering, do you like now see, okay, what was Gurudev's vision for you? What was he trying to achieve, for example? I mean, there may be many things as a leader, as a person. What vision do you feel he has for you, and how is that? How are you experiencing that? Did it, did it work? I mean, simply put, where are you standing in that, if you want to say?
No, I think it's a great question because we go through so many transitions in our lives, at least most of us. Most of us take little detours. Someone once said it's like GPS. If you turn a little bit, you make a wrong turn on GPS, and it's guiding you. So it's like Guru and Krishna are the GPS for us. So if we turn off, the GPS says recalculating route.
Yeah.
Right. So the adjustment is made to keep us on track. And ultimately, since we know time is only relative here, we shouldn't get so hung up if it takes, if it's a week-long detour or a lifetime detour, obviously. But I can say that like a few things. One time, Gurudev, he asked me if I would become the assistant GBC for Texas and so on. And like the management part wasn't a challenge for me, like organizing things or keeping track of a budget or whatever like that. It was more the internal things, and also I think assisting Gurudev that was more challenging than the temple president for me. But that was probably early to mid 90s, and I said, I don't think so, because he asked. It wasn't like, I want you to do this. And he never asked me again. And I reflected on it because I saw him off at the Houston airport in late 82 or very early 83. He had me meet him there, and he told me he compared ISKCON, the institution ISKCON, as like a giant, and that he wanted me to, well, like any giant, right, to be careful. He didn't want me to get trampled under the institution's feet, but rather right on the shoulders. He was very visionary. We all know that, very mature and brilliant, and like I asked, I had trouble with my own emotions before even joining, the temple. So these emotions were, I think, part of the human experience that I think is essential, at least for me, to make any progress spiritually. And I can say that Gurudev was he was going through major transformations. Like I heard a class where he said it is the responsibility of the guru. This is not like temple president stuff, but I think it's more important, so I'll share it. And he said it's a response in this class. I think it was like probably a 2001 class from Australia or something. And he said it's the responsibility of the spiritual master to share his emotions with his disciples. And my reaction was, which emotions did he share? Like I've been always craving this, like all of us, I think, craving the softness, the love, the patience, the fatherly, right, grandfatherly type of experience. And yeah, so I called Kalachandji Prabhu, his brother, because for me, I'm like on a 25-year mission, as I think you know, Rati, to come out of emotional confusion into integrating it with my spiritual sensibility and accepting things as mercy. So, yeah. So Kalachandji said that he was, because, you know, we got the frustration turned into anger sometimes like that, and his intensity, you know, alongside all the care and love. But Kalachandji said that he shared his emotions to the best to his capacity at that time. Does that make sense? That helped me a lot. That was a big healing type thing. And I understand it's my ego and my desire to control and all, you know, I take responsibility. I don't have resentment like that. But the absolutism of the 80s and 70s, what I experienced, and the 80s and the 90s is a misconception. The absolutism of the concept of guru and guru tattva, to my understanding, is includes humanity, the humanity of the guru, and that each one of our teachers, shiksha or diksha, are continually growing, because how can they not be? Krishna's expanding constantly, including his love. So, yeah, why shouldn't the guru have the capacity to improve? If you're already on an absolute platform and perfect, there's no room for growth, right? So that is one thing. Then at Govardhan, for those disciples on this call who are disciples of Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami, Asit Krishna Maharaj is in charge of Govardhan now, right? And he started to initiate. He's 43 years old in his body. He's a Risan, born and raised in Jagannath Puri, and a very, you know, his samskaras are very few scars, if you will. And he's a very special soul, you know. And he told me that, and this is like late 2001, that Gurudev was in Govardhan, and a disciple came in and something happened. And Gurudev corrected or chastised, or, you know, we would call, gave him the mercy or the sauce or all this, you know, these things that allow us to giggle and laugh a little bit. And Gurudev, after the disciple left, broke down crying. St. Krishna Maharaj said, sobbing. And just saying, I just don't want to have to, this position is so difficult. I have to correct them. He was really starting to struggle with that. Because it's a very painful thing, you know, to try and strip away someone's ego. How difficult, you know, because that person inevitably, at least 99.9% of the time, some part of their ego is going to fight back. You know, for me, it was I would be quiet and then off in tears. That was me. But we're all different, you know. I didn't cry hardly at all till I was 40 years old, and then it started coming out.
If you don't mind, something I'd like to mention, because we do get caught up in talking about Srila Gurudev's heaviness. And quite often we don't share, those of us who had the opportunity to see his soft sides. I remember one conversation up in his bedroom. It was in the afternoon, and he was in a very reflective mood. This was, of course, during the latter days of the Guru reform thing, when things had calmed down. And he said to me that, he says, Radhanath, you don't realize how fortunate you are in ISKCON. And I was a little bewildered. And I said, I know. He goes, no, you don't know what I'm talking about. Uh, he said, what you have is you have a lot of friends. He
Hmm.
said, and your friends make your experience so much better. He said, I love my disciples and I love taking care of my disciples. He said, but I have no one that I can sit and intimately talk with. And he said, that is something that's essential. And I think one of the things that is something that he instilled in me. I like to think that I have tremendous love for my God brothers and God sisters. And part of that is because of Srila Gurudev having told me that. How important it is how we not only view each other, but how we share our emotions with each other. And I had mentioned one other time before, because Gurudev said he had no problem showing his emotion or sharing his emotion. I try to do the same thing. I'm not at all adverse to telling someone I love them, because one day we're not going to be able to say that.
Hmm.
And then the other side of that is, and I've always envied Mathuranath. Mathuranath has the he has the absolute best relationship with Gurudev I think I've ever seen with any disciple. Gurudev absolutely loves this man, and that I saw, he never chastised Mathuranath, or if he did, it was only lightly. But he, I don't know, Mathuranath was able to say things to Gurudev and act with Gurudev in a way that was just so unique. And I would love for some time for him just to share with us his intimate experiences with Gurudev. I, you know, on the one occasion I got to travel with him, uh, he said, if I ask you a question, you have to answer the question, because you're my only association. It's not just you're my disciple. You have to give me, your opinion. So that told me that it was more than it was the guru disciple relationship, but it went much higher and much deeper. And it was incumbent on me to understand what my spiritual master needed. That's what made him so special to Prabhupada, not just his dedication. Srila Gurudev understood what Prabhupada needed to fulfill Lord Chaitanya's mission. This has escaped so many people. It wasn't he was just heavy because that was him. But it wasn't just he was heavy because he wanted to push his agenda. He pushed it because he knew what Prabhupada needed. And anyhow, so I'm sorry I took off on that tangent, but I would like for more people, whenever we have Zoom meetings and wherever we're together, let's talk about the soft times. Let's talk about how, in my case, Gurdev, when he decided he wanted to work out, when he decided he wanted to do steam baths and what have you, he took me with him as his son, and you get to see that softer side. And far too often, we don't share these sweet, soft, intimate relations and exchanges we have with Gurudev. So all of us, let's please try to do that more often.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
as you go worldwide, it's the same thing. I totally, 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 totally agree. People, want in this world drama, and intensity and extremism, but yeah, that was part of him. And I know that he also said, warned people. I don't know the individual circumstance, but somebody was judging somebody for something they did. And he reminded that person who was judging the other person, um, one mistake doesn't represent the whole person. So he was very lenient and understanding. as a general rule, I think.
I think what we should do is, just like this series is really, about some of the administrators at the Dallas Temple, I think we should do a series on just that, about Gurudev's emotional, exchanges with the disciples, or somebody else outside the disciple group, but especially with the disciples, because I think there's a treasure there of things that we will learn that'll deepen our love for Gurudev. But more importantly, I'm thinking a little ahead. I'm thinking 100 years from now, 200 years from now, people are going to look back and say, these were the people who were there at the beginning of this movement. And the movement's going to be very different at that time, because Prabhupada himself said that the second half of the movement will be very different from the first half. But to see what happened at that time and to hear that there were emotions, it wasn't like everybody was so on an absolute platform, There were things that happened, the undercurrents, which actually kept the thing together. Because if you keep everything on an absolute platform, things don't work. Sooner or later, they're going to crash. It's only the emotional undercurrents that keep things alive in a way that you can expand and grow. So in that sense, thank you for telling us that, because I think that can be our next series of TKG memories about, let's talk about, the emotions, and the raw emotions included, but the emotions. That would be so amazing. I think that'd be a blockbuster. We could create a movie from that. That would be a bestseller forever, Thank you very much, Radha Prabhu and Yudhishthira Prabhu, for that. Very good. Excellent. Anybody else have things that you'd like to ask and speak? Please chime in. There'll be 2 more sessions. I think we've got 4 more devotees speak. Radha Prabhu and Mathuranath Prabhu will be speaking at the next session. And then we'll have 2 more, myself and Nrsimharupa Prabhu. And then we'll get into the other sessions also. But please, anybody else?
I just want to thank everyone. That's all. It's like absolutely beyond life-changing to have this family.
Yes.
And in particular, I know that when I was temple president, I was far from being a spiritual leader who was inspiring everybody and all that. I was far from that. And I know Radha Vinod Prabhu and Mathuranath, I hope you're listening, although we're not seeing your pretty face. They both helped me personally so much, and others were there. Those were interesting days with Kamadhenu, and then Lavanga was there, and Dharasai Prabhu was there, and Gitamrita was in the treasury, and we were actually in those offices. Now with technology, it's almost not necessary to have offices where people sit except for to meet people. So yeah.
Prabhu had a question. Her question is, Prabhu, could you share what were the difficulties managing the temple, this temple?
Radhanath Prabhu, do you want to I didn't have any problems at all.
No, everything was fine. We just lacked personnel and Lakshmi. Other than that,
and maturity.
And maturity.
I
think the hardest thing for me at all in managing, because managing is really not that difficult if you just have to manage. But as I alluded to earlier, in our positions, we were so intimately involved in so many people's spiritual life. And because our spiritual lives were young, it made the way that we interacted with each other very difficult. We weren't always nice to each other. And I would like to follow Yudhishthira Prabhu's lead and apologize, because I did things and said things just because I was this stupid, passionate kid that just wanted to push through and get the job done. And I too would have loved to have done something else, but it was what it was. And now looking back on it, it's one of those things like my Vietnam experience. I wouldn't want to go back, but I also wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yudhisthira Prabhu?
I don't know. It's a funny question in one sense. I mean, I think the biggest challenge for me was being Krishna conscious. Everything goes easier when you see God's hand and presence, Radharani and Krishna's presence in everything. And we know what the feeling when we enter the room of an exalted person or an advanced person, and it's like lifting us up, you know. One of our god sisters said, yeah, being in Vrindavan or Mayapur, it's, hard materially, easy spiritually, and in the West, it's the reverse. So it's kind of like that when we went into, I mean, being in an advanced soul's presence, I don't want, no need to single out anybody, is inevitably uplifting to the point where that person is connected to God. That's all. It's really that simple. But it's also very difficult, to have to set an example when you're still a beginner spiritually in a lot of ways. All of you know that I think the movement would be better off if it had first trained us to be human beings. Because so many people who joined the movement in those days were very independently minded and very much rule breakers, and anti-establishment and anti-authority. So those were the patterns, somebody who's questioning things like, who am I? Well, come on, your parents gave you a name. There's no question. You already know who you are. What do you mean, who am I? What's the purpose of life? You already know. You're going to law school. And it goes on and on and on like that. But I think that the most difficult thing really is going through the process of devotional service, whether you're managing or bussing dishes in the restaurant or cutting. I was the slowest potato peeler in the world when we all went into the kitchen and cut up for the Sunday feast. And I don't know what else to say, but so it was challenging, but I think the spiritual challenges are the most important challenges and the biggest ones. At least that's my experience.
She had a follow-up, which was, and how did Srila Gurudev help in those situations?
He gave advice to me, which I didn't follow often. One of them was to go give Gita classes in different homes, regularly, like once a week, to go into Indian community families' homes specifically. That's what he said, because I think they were more ready, willing, and interested, to hear. And I, hardly did that. And at the same time, he knew that I was started a company, was still working to earn money, and also new father, plus his, permanent secretary. And that meant a lot of different things. And then also temple president. So, yeah, in those days, for me, I was more of a human doing than a human being.
And I think that's a good point. I was picked only because I was so full of passion. Sadly, even in my old age, I have more than I need. But Srila Gurudev knew that I had a propensity to work hard and to do whatever needed to be done. And if somebody else wouldn't do it, that I wouldn't let it go undone. And that's simply the reason that he asked me to do the service, because there was a lot that needed to be done during that time, and there was just not enough people to do it. So some of us who had the capacity had to work overtime at it.
And do you
And
see, Radha, do you see how it creeps in on all of us? I'm not singing you out, but we fall into thinking we're the doer. I mean, I didn't fall into it. I always thought I was the doer, during those years. If you philosophically pinned one of us down, sure, we would understand it. But we were just young, speaking for myself, and not that advanced. And that when you think you're the doer, that's when the problems begin.
Mm.
Because there's so much to do, right? Think of what's on Krishna's plate. And he's simultaneously playing with his friends and dancing up and down and chasing the cows. And yeah.
It's
but
a
that's
real
still that's
multitasker.
going to be to our eternal benefit, because Gurudev instilled that in us, even now. And not so much for me, because I'm just out here, on a farm. But when I hear people talk about my God brothers and God sisters, about how much y'all still do, how much energy you still have, and how much we get, that that is that's that is from Srila Gurudev. He instilled that in us, and that is his greatest gift, or not his greatest gift, but his great gift. And it will something that will always be to our eternal credit, is that go and do what needs to be done. Maybe he didn't physically do the things we did, but that's who he was. He made sure things always
Yeah.
got.
One of the first things, did he ever tell you, Radhanath Prabhu? One of the first things he told me was Prabhupada taught him to be responsible means to respond. And that's not just to emails and text messages and phone calls. That means responding to action, call to action, to actually do things. He may have been, thinking about it was based on communication, but responding is responding with responsibility. It's like we always think, okay, Shravanam Kirtanam, it's hearing and chanting. And at least for me, I always thought that was just japa related. But hearing and speaking is a constant thing. And it may not be loud when our mind is speaking, but it's very important. Thinking, feeling, willing, acting. We have to be careful what we're thinking, not just what we're speaking.
Well, and that's the
So,
one thing that I always had to be cautioned about. You and Nityananda Prabhu are intellectuals. I'm not an intellectual. I'm just a passionate go do it. So Gurudev always had to constantly remind me to stop and think about what you're going to do. Don't just spring into action. Have a plan.
well, speaking for me, you're one of the most loved God brothers. And because of your samskaras, being a unique individual who has a big heart and communicates his feelings more easily than someone like me, I think that's so much more of a gift than being able to read a spreadsheet and balance the books and all that. So, yeah, isn't it wonderful that we're all so unique?
Yes.
And Gurudev used that uniqueness in each of us. He was expert at using what you had, just take what you have and use it for Krishna. And Gurudev was so expert in reading people. I think he even told Mathurnath one time, even before he became a devotee, he was able to read people.
Mm.
And that was one of his greatest gifts that he brought to our movement.
Wonderful. Thank you both so very much. Shabir Prabhu, how much time do we have? Do we continue? Oh, she's our
What do you
director
think,
here.
Prabhu? Do you want to continue, or
We're
we push
happy to
it for next week?
continue. If people have questions, I'm happy to continue. But
Yeah, if anybody has question, yeah, we can go ahead.
Yeah, maybe that way. If someone has questions, then sure. Otherwise, we're already about an hour and 20 minutes, and that's a long listen for anyone that wants.
oh, it was a very short time, really.
Rati Manjari.
Oh, Rati Manjari's hand up. Go ahead, Rati Manjari.
She'll have to unmute or be unmuted.
Or maybe, did she have a hand up and not bring it down or something?
I think she just poked it up.
I'll put it up again. Okay.
I think so, but because that put her to the front of the line.
It's on, there you go.
Okay, yes. Hare Krishna. Okay, I can't do the video, but my question is this. Again to Yudhishthira Prabhu. You were labeled as by Srila Gurudev himself as his, quote, permanent secretary. So, and you also have a lot of management experience. So, did you find that what did you have to learn or to be to qualify for that? Because that's quite a high, he must have had a lot of faith and trust in you. But what skills were you presenting, or sorry, maybe not words so well, but what did that mean? How could you be that permanent secretary? What did you have to be like? If I'm clear enough.
Yeah, I can share two quick things. One is that I needed to learn what a lota was and how to cover it, how to fill it, when he would drink, all of that, right? I already knew how to book airline flights. Peter Burwash, I had 10 years as a senior vice president. So you could say that, I was called his right-hand man, whatever that means, I wasn't a secretary per se, but I hid behind doing because it was a lot easier for me than relationships and feeling and all that, due in part to upbringing and also previous lives. So I don't think, honestly, I had to learn a little bit of the ins and outs of ISKCON, but I was already around the movement also for 8 years. By the time 1983 came around and got initiated. So, yeah, I mean, Gurudev told me two things. To be responsible means to respond, and to be a secretary means to be able to keep a secret.
He actually answered that question, Mother Ratamanjari, to me. Why Yudhishthira was so uniquely qualified to be his permanent secretary. One single word: organization.
I never heard that.
I did.
I heard sanity. Once Dharma was in Toronto with him, and they were, you know how it could be, like 4 or 5 people spoil the soup, So Gurudev said, and this is not me patting myself on, because remember, I'm the one that gave the BlackBerry, and Gurudev made a face like, is that where your consciousness is at, compared to Mukunda Datta Prabhu? But anyway, he got me on the phone. People were struggling. I wasn't available to travel with him. And he said, finally, someone who's sane. So I had material sanity, I guess, but it is what it is, Rati. Like he asked you to do the tape ministry service. You have, your samskaras allow you to lead wonderful kirtans. You do so well, like hosting podcasts or Zooms, interviewing people. You have your own type of charisma. You're a good listener, all those things, So each of us has our types of qualities. And I think my only precursor was having a bit of a leadership nature and being, knowing how to be organized,
Nice. Thank you.
But I don't think I don't know. It's just, we're all so unique. And accepting ourselves. This is like one of the things I'm going through in my life at the ripe young age of 71 is accepting ourselves and not being anxious about falling short and carrying guilt and all that. And that, for me, it's a lifelong process, and making sure that we feel loved and embracing ourselves and accepting others for where they're at. These are the big challenges in life. Being organized is, Krishna's a supremely organized person. That's about all I can say. Is that okay, Rati?
She is muted right now.
You muted.
Yeah, she said yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
I hope so.
There are some people dropping off, and before people drop off, Shaivi Prabhu, are we meeting next week or is it week after that?
Depend if Radha Vinod Prabhu, Mathunath Prabhu will be free next week. You want a Saturday or a Sunday morning? Or a Saturday evening?
Saturday evening won't work. Next week we have a very big temple program on Saturday.
So Saturday morning or Sunday?
Yeah, Saturday morning or Sunday, whichever works.
So they are there. They can confirm it now itself. Radhanath Prabhu, Mathunath Prabhu and Radha Vinod.
Radha Vinod Prabhu and Mathunath Prabhu, can you please tell us if you're available next week, either Saturday morning or Sunday morning?
They can unmute themselves because they are co-hosts.
Okay, they're co-hosts, yeah. Unmute yourselves, Prabhu.
Saturday is best for me.
Saturday morning, okay.
Same time, Prabhu?
Anytime. We have to go to the temple, no? What time are we going to the temple? Yeah, in the morning, anytime in the morning, noon time.
Okay.
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 And Mathunath Prabhu?
I'm going to be out of town Saturday
Oh.
and Sunday. So,
I'm out of town now.
yeah, I mean, I'll be I'll be in Oklahoma. I mean, I can do it maybe.
Do they have Wi-Fi in Oklahoma?
I doubt.
The whole stage is out.
No, so I'm not sure. I'm just going to be with my sons. We're going to be camping out. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So maybe we can move you out next week and replace with somebody else. Or
Yourself, Prabhu.
Or you want-
what
No,
about the week after that? Is that
the
okay?
week after that, that's better.
Okay, so let's just do the week after that for all of us then. For next two people.
I wonder
Okay.
if Drista might be a good person if he'd be willing.
This,
That's
anybody have his
interesting.
contact number?
Yeah, I can message it to you.
Oh,
Okay,
wonderful.
then
That's
I'll
wonderful.
check.
Yeah, because Rudrani is our god sister, and Drista was,
Oh,
he was
Drishta
very
Prabhu.
stable.
Oh, Drishta Prabhu is the temple president?
Drista Prabhu was the vice president when I
Oh,
became
okay.
temple president because, as I mentioned, he was Prabhupada disciple, more experienced in devotional communities, and yeah, because he was older and Prabhupada disciple, he was more advanced and more mature in a lot of ways.
Well, he also was here during the whole time.
Yeah.
He was one of the Prabhupada disciples that never left.
Yeah, very
We can
mature.
try- We can try both Drishta Prabhu and Gopalacharya Prabhu also. If we can get them on, that'd be great.
So, Shaibya, I'll message you.
Okay. I just talked to him in Messenger, Facebook. So if you give his contact number, I can just WhatsApp and chat with him.
Yeah, I have it. I just have to share it with you. I'll do that now.
Okay, bro.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. Generally, we don't go beyond 1.5 hours. Thank you all very much for attending. And again, thank you, Radhanath Prabhu and Yudhishthira Prabhu for your way beyond valuable contributions. And we hope to hear others as well, but have everybody chime in, especially on that emotional one. That'll be really great. Thank you again all very much. Vanchakalpa Trubhischa.
Namo Namaha.
Jai Shri Gurudev ki Jai.
Jai.
Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Jai.
Haribo Nityanandaji.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo is there.
Haribo, I love all of you.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.